On a cold February morning in 1940, inside a drafty old manor house just outside Cambridge, England, a small group of mathematicians and linguists huddled over piles of papers, tangled wires, and strange electrical devices. The air smelled of stale tea and chalk dust. At first glance, nothing about their work looked extraordinary, just a ragtag team of eccentric intellectuals. A poet, a chess champion, a self-taught math prodigy, and a few Cambridge dons. They sat hunched over equations that twisted the mind. But what they were trying to solve was no ordinary puzzle. They were attempting to unlock the Nazi war machine's most fiercely guarded secret, the Enigma cipher. To most people, Enigma was just another code. To Hitler's generals, it was an unbreakable fortress of German engineering, an electronic lock that, once set, could never be undone. Every German submarine in the Atlantic, every strategic order from Berlin, every secret signal from Rommel's Afrika Korps passed through this machine. If the Allies could crack it, they would gain access to the hidden heartbeat of the Third Reich. If they failed, the Atlantic would become a graveyard. But breaking Enigma wasn't a task of brute force. It was a task of the mind, of pattern recognition, pure logic, and bold intuition. And at the center of this quiet, high-stakes war was a man the British called unerringly brilliant. His name was Alan Turing. Turing wasn't like the military planners around him. Short, slight, and painfully shy, he spoke softly, avoided eye contact, and preferred numbers over people. His clothes rarely matched. His thoughts drifted so deeply into abstraction that conversations sometimes left him confused. To a casual observer, he looked like a harmless oddball, the kind of man you'd never expect to change history. But inside that cold room in Cambridge, he was about to do exactly that. The Enigma machine itself looked deceptively simple, a typewriter-like keyboard, a set of rotating rotors, and a lampboard that lit up coded letters. But every time a key was pressed, the rotors shifted, creating a brand-new substitution cipher. Each day, the Germans changed the rotor settings, plugboard connections, and started keys. The number of possible combinations was staggering, more than 158 septillion settings. Cracking it by brute force? Completely impossible with the technology of the time. But Turing saw something others didn't. He believed that beneath this chaos lay patterns, tiny cracks created by human habits, repeated German procedures, and a predictable, sometimes lazy, structure of military messages. If he could find those patterns, he could shrink the search space. He could automate the hunt for keys. He could, in effect, build a machine to find the machine. The device he envisioned eventually became known as the bombe, a massive electromechanical machine filled with spinning drums, switching relays, and clicking rotors. To onlookers, it looked like something straight out of steampunk fantasy. Wires everywhere, gears grinding, the sound of metal snapping like a furious typewriter. But building the bombe was only half the battle. The codebreakers needed raw material, intercepted German messages, and they needed clever guesses about what those messages might contain. In London, radio intercept stations collected thousands of encrypted transmissions every day. These messages were like fallen leaves, scattered, confusing, and seemingly random. Yet the codebreakers' new meaning lay beneath the surface. For months, the work was grueling, secret, and deeply frustrating. Bombs were built, broken, rebuilt, and tested again. Teams worked night after night, fueled by tea, cigarettes, and the painful knowledge that every convoy lost in the Atlantic meant hundreds of sailors drowning in freezing water. The stakes couldn't have been higher. Then, in early 1941, progress finally came. It wasn't a dramatic eureka moment. War rarely gives those. It was a slow realization that German Enigma operators had predictable habits. They repeated greetings. They reused phrases. They followed patterns without noticing. Turing and his team began using these predictable words, called cribs, to narrow down rotor settings. When the bombe eliminated thousands of wrong possibilities, the codebreakers checked the remaining ones manually. More often than not, the cipher cracked. The first major victory came in March 1941. British naval intelligence intercepted an Enigma message describing convoy positions in the Atlantic. The codebreakers entered a possible crib into the bombe, and within hours, the day's Enigma key was solved. For the first time, Allied commanders could read the precise movements of German U-boat wolf packs hunting merchant ships. The impact was immediate. Admiral Sir Max Horton rerouted convoys away from danger zones. Shipping losses suddenly dropped. Fuel reached ports. Food reached starving cities. Factories kept running. Trains kept moving. And for the first time in months, British morale began to rise. Churchill was informed privately. He is said to have called the achievement the single most important contribution to Allied victory. Yet the world knew nothing. Ultra, the intelligence from breaking Enigma, had to remain secret. If the Germans even suspected their system was compromised, they would change the machine entirely. So Allied commanders used the intel carefully. Some convoys were saved. Others were sacrificed to protect the secret. Meanwhile, the Germans remained completely unaware. Admiral Karl Donitz believed his messages were untouchable, as safe as the walls of the Reich. Every failed attack, every lost submarine, he blamed on bad luck or weather. Never once did he consider that the Allies were reading his mail. Year after year, the Allied advantage grew. More bombs were built, more operators trained. Soon, Ultra wasn't just predicting submarine movements. It was shaping entire campaigns in North Africa, influencing Luftwaffe deployments, and revealing German defensive preparations along the French coast. And then came D-Day. On June 6, 1944, when Allied forces stormed Normandy, success depended not only on soldiers and ships, but on information. The Germans expected an invasion, but were convinced it would come at Pas-de-Calais. Their miscalculation came partly from Allied deception, and partly from the Allies reading their reactions in real time through Enigma decrypts. German divisions were moved, but to the wrong place. Many never reached Normandy in time. The invasion succeeded. By the end of the war, hundreds of bombs had been built. Tens of thousands of Enigma messages had been cracked. Historians later estimated that Ultra shortened the war by at least 2 years and saved millions of lives. And Alan Turing? After the war, he returned to academic life. His greatest achievements remained classified. He continued pioneering the foundations of modern computing and artificial intelligence. But his personal life suffered in a society that did not understand him. In 1952, he was prosecuted for his sexuality. In 1954, at only 41, he died from cyanide poisoning. For decades, the world knew almost nothing of the secret war he fought. It wasn't until the 1970s, when Ultra was finally declassified, that people learned how close the war had been and how a quiet mathematician and his unlikely band of codebreakers had defeated the most powerful cipher machine in history. Today, historians debate battles, strategies, and turning points. But one truth stands out. Sometimes wars aren't won on battlefields. Sometimes they are won in cold rooms filled with dots and dashes, chalkboards and wires, where a handful of brilliant minds dared to take on the impossible.